Okay, let's see if it works this time. Apologies for anyone who was tuned in 30 seconds ago. It seemed that our platform launched the show and then cancelled it. But here we are. Welcome to infosec.live, where we bring you the latest insights from the front lines of cybersecurity. For those that haven't watched before, my name's Simon, and today's episode is not a drill. The DFARS Final Rule has been published. CMMC is now law. If your organization isn't ready, you could be out of the defense marketplace completely. Joining me today is Kevin, a senior consultant for GRC with Mirai Security. Rather than me ramble on, let's bring him on and find out what CMMC is all about. Now, Kevin, I'm on the wrong side. I'm going to pull you over. And I just want to try this with you on the screen. So Kevin and I have had a bit of back and forth beforehand with old Simon trying to pronounce his surname. So Lageweg. Is this correct? Got it?
Yeah.
Yes. Kevin Lageweg, a massive welcome. Glad I got that right. And thank you for taking the time to come on. We have chatted before off camera or not being live. And the conversation did go off on a bit of a tangent. We've both got very similar interests outside of work. We're not going to talk about that today, but we could come on for another show and talk about that later. Maybe we'll give you a spoiler at the end. I'm here to talk about CMMC, but before we do that, Kevin, please tell the audience a little bit about your background, where you've come from, and what it is you do now at Mirai Security.
Sure. Thanks, Simon, for the introduction. So my name is Kevin. I work with Mirai Security in the Pacific Northwest. My path into cybersecurity is a bit less traditional, I would say. I find most individuals come through the IT side of things. However, my background is in actually the engineering world. So I was an electrical instrumentation and controls engineer working in the oil and gas industry and mining industry for 7 years, got my PEng. And then Mirai Security approached me with an opportunity to work with a mining company. They were looking to implement a operational technology or OT security program for a very large mining organization. And I took the leap about 4.5 years ago. I switched careers over into cybersecurity and never looked back ever since. So I started out my career in cybersecurity helping organizations secure their operation technology environment, process control networks, all the safety critical systems, SIL and SIS systems. And then I started branching out and learning more about all the other different types of organizations that Mirai was helping out. And I landed myself in GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, and helping with lots of different types of frameworks, NIST CSF, CIS, and now CMMC. So I've been learning CMMC for the last 2 years or so and helping organizations implement it, whether it's their first time hearing about it or if they're really close to finishing the implementation of it and everything in between.
Love that. And for those watching who don't know much about CMMC, you're in good company because neither do I. And today, hopefully, Kevin's going to break that down to us Barney style. So I can understand that. One thing I pick up on there, your background engineering, then coming across and doing OT security. I think there's plenty of material there for another show. The OT sector is very interesting. It's very antiquated, a lot of old equipment, must be very challenging. So let's come back to that, and maybe I'll have you back on in a few weeks' time to talk all things OT. But Kevin, let's crack on with the main topic. What's going on?
Okay, so CMMC, it's kind of been in the works for many years now, since about 2019. Something that no one's really, well, maybe a select few have taken quite seriously since then. But now it's official. So as of November 10th, it's now enforceable by law, and any DoD contract that handles CUI, you're going to need to be CMMC level 2 certified in order to be a part of that contract.
And did you say CUI then?
Yeah. So CUI, what that is, it's called controlled unclassified information. And it's basically anything that pertains to a critical system as part of the defense goes. So I like to use this example of sort of why CMMC and why now to talk about what it really means. What is CUI? What is FCI? Why is this all happening now, right? So the most interesting example that I can think of is when you think about the supply chain involved with manufacturing and assembling, like an F-16, right?
Yeah.
So the DoD, they work with a prime contractor. In this case, would be Lockheed Martin. So they orchestrate the whole plane, right, for every single part. That prime contractor, they work with a lot of different companies, actually hundreds of subcontractors to manufacture the F-16. So they send out some schematics, parts lists for rivets, for a navigation system to one subcontractor, and then that subcontractor has subcontractors for their personal security. Right? So the supply chain goes on and on.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the F-16 specifically because there's this other fighter jet. It's China's J-10 fighter jet. And anyone interested in doing a side-by-side comparison, just Google a picture of an F-16 and a J-10. And it's literally the same plane.
Yeah.
So America's adversaries realized that, okay, so classified information is very well protected at the government level. However, what they're able to do is basically steal bits and pieces of data from these subcontractors, sort of at the ends of the branches of these supply chains, and reverse engineer the solution without having to spend any money on research and design.
It's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah, so this has become a matter of national security, and this is why things are starting to change. This is why it's becoming more enforceable. Anyone that's on the supply chain needs to have an environment where they know that the data is safe. They call that a CUI enclave, or basically like a lockdown system where they can receive sensitive information and send it back and do the work that they need to do and make sure that it's not getting compromised or stolen.
That's really interesting. I'm frantically looking for something. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine and now a member of our advisory board, Professor Buck Rogers. And apparently we've got something similar that's just been launched in the UK. So I'll do a bit of digging around on that after the show.
Same with Canada as well.
Yeah. So, okay. Interesting.
So America's kind of leading the charge on what this looks like and the implications of it and the effectiveness of it and the importance of it, and other nations are starting to catch on as well. So Canada's spinning up a very, very similar program. It uses the same foundational controls that CMMC uses, which is NIST 800-171 or 171A, lays out 110 security practices. The exact same standard is being adopted by Canada as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I haven't looked into it in great detail. My friend sent me over some stuff the other day, but his comment around it was basically, it's a different name, but it's pretty much the same as what the Americans are doing. So I expect you to pick that
CPCSC.
But then if it's not broken, why try and fix it, I suppose. Ask China, they'll tell you that. Okay, let's not get political. Let's start with the bigger picture. What does the publication of that DFARS Final Rule actually mean, Kevin?
So it means that it's now enforceable under Title 48 of the Code of Federal Regulations. So it's not just guidance anymore. You can't just go in and self-assess yourself, submit a score and say, hey, we're good. Now it's enforceable. Now you're going to need a third party to come in, assess you. You're going to need that certification. And if you don't, you're not going to get the contract. You're not going to be a part of that supply chain anymore.
I mean, what you said, 2 years this has been going on now, building up to this point.
Well, since 2019, so 6.
So even longer. Okay.
Yeah.
And as a rough percentage, how many businesses who deal in the federal or the government sector do you feel are actually ready for this? As a rough guess.
That's so.
I won't hold you to it.
Without knowing everything that everyone's doing and not having the statistics in front of me.
Let me reword the question.
Very few.
Have you? Okay, perfect. That's the answer. So you would have thought, with all that notice and knowing that it's coming, and the fact that this could be the lifeblood of your business if you sell into the DoD, but typically, as with all businesses, we tend to get on with trying to make money and maybe leave the foresight in the planning, which I suppose works well and plays nicely into the hand of consultancies like yours. But let's talk about two things. I want to know why now. You said that we've been talking about it since 2019. So why now? And what's the actual reason behind rolling this out? You've touched on it a little bit with the F-16
Yeah.
comparison. Can you dig in any more on that?
Yeah, I mean, the why now, it's a combination of a few different factors, current administration, uh, and it's been in the works. It's been a long-term plan, and it's just going to plan. And this is something that everyone has been expecting, though a lot of organizations were kind of holding their breath and thinking, maybe we got more time, but it's still going forward. We're still steamrolling ahead. It's been a matter of national security for a long time. The administration understands that this isn't going away anywhere. And it's become very important with all of the different replicas of equipment that are identified out there in the marketplace from adversaries. So,
do you think people thought that with perhaps a new government coming in, that would change? So they've just been holding
yes,
back a little bit, like in the UK at the moment. We've got a budget in November that's going to tell us all we have to pay loads more tax and can't do lots of things. So which means our housing market's just frozen at the moment. No one's buying, no one's selling. I wonder whether, after the latest administration got in, whether then it was like,
yeah,
they're not going to
exactly.
change
So
it.
there was a lot of breath holding, so to speak, when
Yeah.
administration changes.
Yeah.
But now everyone's starting to realize, okay, this is real. It's happening. Let's go. We got to get this done. The problem with trying to get it done now and being a bit more reactive is that CMMC implementation, it's quite complex, and it usually costs about $100,000 to get
Oh, wow.
compliant ready, and up to 18 months to implement all of the security requirements. If you don't have any.
So if people are a standing start now, they really are behind the curve, aren't they? It's quite worrying, really. So we've talked about why it's been brought in. We've talked a little bit about the how, but what we haven't talked about is the structure. And you've mentioned that it's for people who are in that supply chain for government. But can we touch on what the structure of CMMC is and who it is for specifically, please?
Okay, sure. So I'm pretty sure that anyone that's learned, hey, we need CMMC, let's get it done, and then they start looking seriously into it, it becomes quite overwhelming, and you can get lost in it, exactly what it means and how to implement it. It's similar to FedRAMP for anyone familiar with that. But first off, it's split out into three different distinct levels. So there's level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is for an organization that's handling something called FCI, Federal Contract Information. So this is data that's like tied to, it's not necessarily confidential or sorry, not, I'm not going to use that word. It's not sensitive. It still needs to be controlled to some degree, because adversaries have been using this federal contract information to kind of trace down what that.
And it's like a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? The more little pieces they can get, the more the bigger picture becomes clear for them to build another F-17. It will be next time.
Yeah. So level 1, if you have anything to do with the DoD and the supply chain, and you're handling contract data, you need to be level 1 compliant. And what that is there's 17 foundational cybersecurity practices you need to implement, and you can sort of self-attest that yourself. You could say, we have it. Here's the evidence of it. You submit your SPRS score, it's called, which is the Supplier Performance Risk Score. You submit that yourself, and away you go. You are now certified level 1. So
what does so let's just, before you go on to level 2, then what does that give you? So can
that
you do business at this point, or
pardon me?
Can you do business with DoD firms at this point, or you can?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but you're not going to be handling any of that controlled unclassified information, or CUI.
Understood.
So this is basically organizations that don't need to touch any of the sensitive data, but still are part of the supply chain. So if you're providing security, physical security to a facility, if you're like a catering company, right? And you're providing catering at some events that have,
you have to have level 1.
You have to have level 1. So you're not, within your organization, you're not actually handling any of that sensitive data, but you know who's in attendance at the event. You have some contractual information dealing with people that are dealing with sensitive information. So it's kind of like at the outer reaches of that supply chain.
Okay, so one would hope as a business that does sandwiches, that it's not going to cost me $100,000 to do that?
That's right. It doesn't. Level 2 is where
goodness.
the bulk of the conversation is.
Just while we're on one then, what is the rough cost for that one, for these businesses that don't hold sensitive data? Again, a guesstimate would be fine. We're not holding you to anything here.
10,000.
Okay, much more reasonable.
Estimate. Yeah. It's much more reasonable. Yeah. And with all of the tools that are out there today, with LLMs and all the resources out there, anyone that sees that they need level 1, they can do it themselves.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not really the best fit for a consultant.
Like no, 100%. Yeah.
The 17 foundational controls are quite straightforward, and I think with what's available out there today, most organizations can probably do that themselves. This, how do we do access?
You know what those I don't know if you've got a list in front of you of what those 17 controls are.
Not specifically what the 17 are, but they're broken out. So there's different levels of the framework. So at the top you have domains. So they're grouped into for level 1, 6 domains. That's access control, identification, and authentication. There's media protection, physical protection, system and communications protection, and system and information integrity. So it's like, we need to encrypt our data. We need to have a process in place to protect and maintain the equipment. We need to have physical protection measures in place. We need to be logging visitors, etc. We need to have media protection. We need to make sure that there's auto-run, autoplay disabled on USB thumb drives. We need to have identification and authentication mechanisms in place, like SSO, MFA. We need to make sure that we have a list of all our identified users, and access control as well. We need to make sure that everyone has strong passwords, and we maintain a users list. We understand all the processes we have acting on behalf of users. So those are the foundational controls.
Okay, that's really helpful. So just another quick question. Sorry, I know I keep bombarding you, but I'm genuinely interested in this. So for a company that's already been, say, through SOC 2 or another kind of auditor-led accreditation or certification, is there crossover? Is there overlap? So is there, if you've already gone through one of these processes? Yeah, okay.
For level 1, there's quite a bit. I've done a sort of like a mapping between level 2 and SOC 2. So CMMC level 2 versus SOC 2, and the overlap is about 25%.
Okay, well, 25 is better than 0, right? It's something.
Yeah. So
I'm dragging out the positives for those firms out there who haven't done anything yet, by the way.
It's just for sort of the baseline of the controls of getting them in place, but CMMC can balloon quite quickly if you don't approach it the right way. So it's a little bit of its own beast.
And this is why you need expert advice for anything like this. And that's not a sales pitch, that's a genuine comment, because what happens is this false economy, you end up spending time and resources you haven't got to get exactly back to the start of where you began and realize that you can't do it. You wasted 2 weeks of your time and you end up finding a professional that do the job. I've been there in my previous business and I've seen other people do it. So the value of a consultant, I can't under or overstate it. So level 2, you said that's where things get a little bit more rigorous. Let's talk about that.
So there's 3 different levels I was talking about. There's level 1, level 2, level 3. The security practices are also broken down into different levels of granularity, right? So I talked about domains. There's security practices, which in level 1, there's 17 of those. In level 2, there's 110 now. So it's quite substantial. But those are broken down even further into what are called security objectives. For level 2, you have to prove that you meet all 320 security objectives. So there's a lot of things that the assessor needs to look at, and there's a lot of requirements that you need to hit. And there's no 98%, 95% requirement. It's 100% or you don't get it. You need to have everything in place.
So do you assess these as well as help people get ready for it? No. So are we going to talk about that later on, or do we want to? We will.
Okay. We can kind of digress into that now, just in the interest of time.
Yeah.
So there's a whole ecosystem of how all this compliance stuff works by an accreditation body called CyberAB. They train individuals like myself as a consultant, and I need to go through some certification to become what's called an RP, a registered practitioner. In my organization, Mirai Security is an RPO, and we are an organization that is certified and allowed basically to provide consulting services to organizations that are seeking certification.
Makes sense.
The accreditation body, CyberAB, also oversees another branch of this ecosystem, which is the assessors, and they're called C3PAOs, or Certified Third Party
Sorry,
Assessment
did you just say C3PO? That's all I heard.
C3PAO.
Oh, sorry,
It's
Star Wars
close.
fan here.
I swear someone did that on purpose.
They did, of course they did, yeah. And the problem you've got is you've now got loads of middle-aged men who love Star Wars in positions of authority who make these decisions. So I think you're probably right.
So those are different companies. Mirai Security doesn't have an interest of going down the route of being assessors and auditors, but we do have partners that do that. So we basically, we come in, we help an organization get audit ready, and we do kind of like a pre-audit assessment of to the best of our knowledge of what the auditor is looking for based on feedback from our auditing partners at a C3PAO. And then that gets passed off to them. Consultants don't have anything to do with the assessment itself. We're not allowed to. It's
No.
It's
Be
a
like
conflict
marking your own homework, wouldn't it?
Lock
really?
us out, and it's up to the organization and the auditor to go down the road to certification. So that's kind of the
this is the other thing, Kevin, is the fact you've got relationships with auditors, because I've had experiences with auditors myself in the past, and you can get really good auditors, and like anything, you can get really bad ones. So if you've got people that you can recommend for that, I think that's superb.
Yeah, and honestly, a really solid piece of advice for any consultants out there listening in the same seat as me. Having an auditor as a partner is extremely valuable, because when it comes to understanding how to meet all of the security objectives, the best way is to ask the auditors, like, hey, does this implementation description that I've wrote, would this meet what you're looking for? As someone who's trying to keep up and learn and continuously learn and try and figure out what the best solution is for each unique organization, having someone to bounce that off of beforehand and say, hey, would this work, right? I think it's going to work. The way I understand it, it's going to work. But there are nuances that are missed, and it's because we're all human and we're all still trying to learn the different nuances of the framework, right?
100%. Yeah. Can I just say something really quickly? You can see that I've put a QR code there. It is fine to scan it for people watching. I've created it myself, and it definitely goes through to Mirai Security's website. So if you are interested in finding out more about them and what Kevin and the team are doing, please do check it out. Sorry, Kevin. I think we were I'd made you go off on a tangent, which I'm really good at. My wife will tell you that.
All right.
I think no, it's me. It's completely me. Level 3, I think, is where we were up to. We talked about level 2. We talked about the fact that you'd gone from 17 to 110, was it, controls? Yeah, which are then broken down into even more horrendous controls, which you then have to get 100% of right.
Yes.
So this is level 2. I'm just sitting here like this, waiting for level 3 now.
Level 3 is an additional 24 security practices on top of the 110, so that brings it up to like 134. So there are very specific contracts that would state level 3 is required. I don't know a whole lot about that. That's not the area of expertise that I can talk about. But this is for I'm just letting everyone know it exists. It's for organizations that are working on like the most critical defense systems, advanced weapon systems.
Yeah, level 3, you have to work in a concrete bunker. You're not allowed any friends or a telephone. I think that's pretty much where we are with that, isn't it?
Yeah. So a bulk of what's applicable to most of the marketplace is level 2.
Okay. Right. So we've heard all that. We've heard people have had a long time to get ready for it. But in reality, we both know that not every company is ready for it. So what happens if they're not? That's the question.
Well, I mean, you're not going to get the contract. You can't be part of the supply chain anymore.
Just like that, from November.
Yep.
That's terrifying. Okay. Can companies still self-attest, though?
So that's a good question, because up until now, you could basically submit your own SPRS score, your supplier risk score. It's the score out of 110, like how many do we hit, right? Yeah. And everyone's been just saying, yeah, we got it. You know, we did an internal audit. We're fine. We got it. And the truth is that it's not working, because when an auditor does go in and take a look, okay, maybe there was a little bit of misunderstanding of what the requirements and objectives are, or a little bit of fluffing up just to try and stay within the supply chain.
Yeah.
You technically still can self-attest that you're compliant level 2. The program is being rolled out in phases. So November 10th starts phase 1, and that's valid for a year. And it basically states, yeah, you can still self-attest level 1, level 2, that's fine. However, it also gives the DoD the right to specify in a contract, like, oh, we'll only consider people with third-party audit certified.
But hold on, so you're saying that they can self-attest for level 1 and level 2 for up to a year. But did you not say earlier on in this chat that it can take over a year from start to finish to get this done?
Yes. Yeah.
So they're not really giving us much rope at all, other than a bit of rope to hang ourselves if we don't do it. That's what it is.
I need to understand phase 2 a little bit better, but I think basically it's just giving a bit more time for people to catch up. The problem right now, and what most people are speculating, is that there is a stipulation in there that says the DoD can say in the contract, we're only considering third-party certified level 2 organizations.
Which I'm sure they will start to do.
And most contracts are going to be asking for that. That's the problem. So most are speculating it's going to be like more than 90%. So if you're self-attesting level 2, it's probably only going to be valid for contracts that don't state that, third party is required.
And if it's anything like dealing with the Department of Defense, is anything like dealing with the Ministry of Defense in the UK, those tender processes are not short. So you've normally got quite a long lead-in time until you get anywhere near signing off a contract. So again, that plays into that. I'm conscious that we've only got a couple of minutes left. I might have to go over 2 or 3 minutes because I've got a couple of questions left, if that's okay with you, Kevin. You haven't got a hard stop.
Yeah. Not a hard stop. I can go longer.
Okay. So what are organizations misunderstanding when it comes to CMMC implementation? What's the biggest issue you've seen?
Well, usually what happens is an organization will understand they need it. They're like, hey, we heard about the CMMC thing. We work with the DoD. Let's implement it. Can you just do it for us? We go in and basically there's an understanding that, hey, just like SOC 2 or another framework, there's a list of controls, you implement them, and away you go. The thing that I think a lot of organizations get hung up on when it comes to CMMC implementation is that it's a scoped assessment. It's basically, how do you scope it is very challenging for organizations. You can't just certify your entire organization and say Mirai Security is CMMC compliant. That's not how it works. You make a system, and it's like a CUI enclave. It's like a smaller portion of your business that's hardened and it's controlled. Okay. And then you create a document called the SSP, or System Security Plan, that describes how that system meets those 110 practices.
And that's kind of like sandboxed to the rest of your business, effectively.
Yeah, it needs to be physically or logically isolated from the rest of the business.
That makes sense.
So scoping it is a challenge because organizations know they need to process, store, or transmit CUI, but they don't know to what degree or how. No. It's like, do we need to just receive and send emails that have CUI? Do we need to print drawings and schematics that are CUI? Answering those questions dramatically changes the scope of the assessment. Because one of them, it's like, hey, we can just buy a software tool like Prevail.
Yeah.
And it will handle, it sets up a secure environment for us to send and receive emails that have CUI in them. Or if you're printing it off, that's now you have a physical network and devices and a bunch of security controls that you need to implement for printing the CUI. It needs to be in a lockdown room. You need to have disclaimers on the room that says CUI is there, and there needs to be proper labeling processes in place, and the people that are handling the physical copies need to be trained on how to handle CUI and how to label it effectively. On everything.
My word.
It's a whole different ballgame, right? So the very first step that I think people fumble on is scoping it. We can't just say, hey, we're Mirai Security, we need to get CMMC certified. That's not how it works. You need to say, what is our CUI handling requirements? Let's scope in the system. We're going to pick who needs to handle the CUI, who's going to have access to it. select individuals. Who are those privileged people?
Who's the
What are
victim?
the
Yeah.
tools that we're going to use to protect this environment? And then once you nail down that scope, then you start looking at the practices and saying, which ones do we have? Which ones are missing? How do we implement those gaps?
That makes absolute sense. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about Cyber AB, yeah, the accreditation body who manage the training and certification for the C3POs, I'm going to call them, or the C3PAOs and consultants such as you guys and girls at Mirai. So where do organizations like you and like Mirai fit into that whole process? We've talked about where Cyber AB sit, the C3PAOs. You're obviously going to tell me you help with the scoping because you just told me that's one of the things people mess up on. But what else do you do? How does Mirai help?
Consider us like your virtual security partner. If you're an OSA or an organization seeking, or OSC, sorry, organization seeking certification, that's the phrase that's used in the framework.
Yeah.
You're an OSC, you know you need to process, store, transmit CUI. Organizations like that don't quite understand how to implement CMMC or get to compliance, or just don't have the resources, will hire a consultant like Mirai to just come in and get it done. What we do is we go in, we assess the current posture, we help with the scoping. What are your requirements? Yeah. We assess against the 320 security objectives or 110 practices and see which ones.
So you're taking a snapshot of where they are now, basically.
Yeah, take a snapshot where you're at now. Take an inventory of all your SaaS platforms that you use, your security tooling capabilities, all of the list of privileged users, your physical locations. We try and scope everything, understand your entire organization and environment, figure out what the gaps are, and try and get you to audit ready and set timelines. So we'll come up with kind of like a project plan and say, okay, we think you can achieve this in the next 6 to 8 months if you follow these steps and implement these tools, and this is how you're going to do it. There are different cases as well that organizations approach us with. It's like, okay, we realized we need CMMC compliance in 8 to 12 weeks. It's necessary for a potential contract. This situation happens, and we do have partners that help with sort of expediting the process as well. And this is one of the topics I wanted to touch on a bit later in the conversation, is about AI tools.
So, you can't do that. You've just stolen my next question, Kevin.
Okay, we'll save it for that.
We can talk about that next.
Sure. We can help organizations that have strict timelines as well through some of the partnerships we have. So there's a lot of tools out there to help you get CMMC compliant. You can get it very quickly. Depending on your CUI handling requirements. Like if you just need to send and receive CUI emails, in your system security plan, it says, here's all the 110 practices, here's the 320 objectives, here's how we fulfill them. What you do is you can buy another tool, and that provider will send you a matrix, a responsibility matrix, and says, we are responsible for 106 out of 110 practices. You copy paste those into your system security plan. You say how you're going to tackle the other 6 of them. How are we going to train our staff? How are we going to ensure that authorized users are handled? And then you can submit that to the auditor. They're going to basically ask that third-party provider, like, hey, make sure you're fulfilling these 106 practices. They'll ask you about the 4, and it's very straightforward and easy, and away you go. But your handling capabilities are then limited. If you're an organization that is developing your own SaaS platform that potentially handles CUI, then it's a whole different story. You're going to need FedRAMP certification, CMMC level 2 certification. It's going to be a ridiculous amount of documentation, processes, and procedures that you need to implement. So long story short, consultants like ourselves help organizations understand their problem and provide a solution and try and meet the deadlines that they need as well. Because we are the ones that are doing this every day, trying to understand the framework better. We do have the partners and understanding of the tooling that's out there to help you based on your specific situation.
Yeah, I mean, the complexities, it's very, very complex. I mean, I don't see how anyone could go through this without guidance. You mentioned AI. I was going to mention AI. How can I not mention AI? Although the only AI mentioned I've seen the last few days in the press is the AI bubble we seem to be in at the moment from a stock market perspective, but that's another discussion. I'm sure AI can help, but how can it help with CMMC? I don't believe for one moment that there's a magic plug and play AI tool that can actually do this for people, because I think the consultative approach is true, but there must be a way of saving some time on it with AI, Kevin.
Yeah, there is. So there's a couple of different tools out there that leverage AI to help this process and expedite it. There are risks, though, obviously. So the thing about proper AI usage is, first, like there's one out there that will generate your SSP for you, leverages AI. You have an hour intake, and that company will get an understanding of your environment. What are the SaaS tools you use? Are you GCP? Are you Azure? And what are all your security protection tools? Are you using Tenable? What are you using, right? And just with that 1 hour of information gathering, you can get a really, really comprehensive system security plan that references all those tools. But the important thing to understand with generative AI is that that's your starting point now, right? There's still that process required, going through and validating everything in the SSP that has been generated and ensuring that it affects reality. Because if it doesn't, the auditor will know. But
100%.
it does help, because the traditional way is obviously extremely accurate if you're writing every single control description by hand. But there is a lot of duplication and nuances that are just tedious, right? And AI helps with that sort of tedious work. So,
But you say, yeah, as you rightly say, though, I mean, I use AI every day in my job.
mhm,
But I use it, and then I review it, and then
yeah,
I check it, and then I change it, and then I'll run it again, and then I'll do the same thing again. I think the due diligence and the validation is so important when you're using it for anything, because it does hallucinate.
yes.
It's quite terrifying sometimes. I'm conscious that we're 10 minutes over, and I can hear my wife stomping around downstairs because I think I've got dinner ready. So I've got one question left for you before we wrap things up, Kevin.
Sure.
What should companies be doing right now?
So there's a few different things you should be trying to do as soon as possible. First is to understand what your CUI handling requirements need to be. That's like number one. And I don't think enough people are talking about that. So what exactly is the CUI that you're handling? Where is it going to be, and scope in that system? So create an enclave, figure out where that CUI is coming in and where it's going to go out from, and who's going to be handling it, and assign those people, and try and make that enclave as small as possible to get compliant as quickly as possible. You can revise it in the future. You need to get recertified every 3 years. You do need to show evidence of maintaining this program throughout those 3 years when that renewal comes up. But for now, if you want to maintain your place in the marketplace and be compliant as soon as possible, make that scope as small as possible to meet the needs of your CUI handling requirement. Start that creating the SSP, the system security plan, write the descriptions of how those things are implemented, find the gaps, close those gaps, and then schedule your third-party assessment. It's probably not in your best interest to do the self-attestation at this point. It's going to be a majority of contracts are going to say, hey, we're only going to consider third-party certified organizations.
I can see that happening. Do you know what, Kevin? What should companies be doing right now? The answer I was expecting was contact Mirai Security. So thank you for giving such a detailed response as to what people should be doing right now. I'm going to write some of these points up and drop them into the description. So for those of you watching live, give me a couple of days and I'll get some of this transcribed so that you can have an easy reference point. And for those of you watching not live or tuning in later to watch the replay, check out the description. There should be some more content in there from today's show. If you're interested in finding out more about how Mirai Security can help you with this, Mirai Security are a partner of Simple Security. We can't recommend them highly enough, which is why we've got them on the show and why we're showcasing them on infosec.live. So if you do want to find out more, use the QR code, have a look, reach out to Kevin or Evo or any of the team there at Mirai. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, as always, when we chat. Let's get you on again in a few weeks. There's at least 2 or 3 topics, panpsychism not included, that we can cover off in depth. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up and I have my spaghetti bolognese for dinner?
No, enjoy. We'll leave it at that. I think we've left enough to think about. So thanks
No,
a
I
lot
think
for your time,
it's been
Simon.
brilliant. No, thank you. It's been really, really good. Have a great rest of the day, and everyone for tuning in and watching. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Back next week, I think, with the CISO experience. Might be the week after. Finger on the pulse here in my calendar. But thank you for tuning in. Thanks for being a great guest, Kevin, and enjoy the rest of the day. See you later.
Thanks.
Bye.